is Glenn Hodges. Welcome to Chattanooga Self-Improvement Meetup, a mastermind group where we listen, learn, ask questions, and comment in an effort to help make each other the best version of ourselves, thus helping to make the world a better place in which to live. And now, Marcia Roberts will introduce our guest speaker for today.
Says that could help us understand our unfair advantage, and that is really intriguing to me. Dean is a Toastmasters area director, 41, Franklin Toastmasters, IPP, SME, and I don't know what those things mean, but Glenn, if you would hop in and tell us about Toastmasters and what he does.
Well, Dean's kind of the guru of Toastmasters, just off the cuff. I don't have his bio before me, but he actually is head of a district there out of Franklin, Tennessee, I believe, and pretty much down in Toastmaster communities nationally, maybe even internationally.
Yeah. Well, he also is the president and founder of Longevity Industries, and I'm sure he will tell us more about that. He's Link Systems innovation strategist and sales engineer, and just a busy guy. He spent 30 years in technology and manufacturing and has trained personnel for over 20 years and works with several professional organizations providing expert skill with advancing technology. He produces the Destiny of Manufacturing podcast, and was really interested to see that because that's something that I'm very interested in. And an educational podcast focused on manufacturing and technology with guests from around the world. And as an innovative strategist, Dean helps manufacturing reach their full potential using technology. And without further ado, we are going to have Communicate to Succeed with Dean Phillips. Thanks for being here, Dean.
Thank you so much, Marcia. Thank you for taking time out of your busy schedules to be here today. When we talk about communicating, it's important to understand, what do you want to do? What is it? Well, today I'm hoping that I can find you a way to do more and be more. That's my goal for you today. Now, here's my background, but of course you guys already ran through it, so there's nothing really to talk about until we get to the end, and I'll kind of go through a couple things if anyone has any questions. Communicate your goals. Making yourself accountable. This is a very important aspect when we talk about communicating. We often overlook this too. It's an area that I feel that people do not do a good enough job communicating out their goals. And I'll get to why. Why you should go out there and communicate it and tell everybody what your goals are. Tell them what you want to achieve. It shows your commitment to your project or your business or whatever you're doing. Do that. Why? What have I done before with it? Understand that you have a potential to succeed if, and only if, you're committed. Now, what's the difference in a breakfast of eggs and sausage? I'm sure some of you have heard this before. The chicken was involved. The pig was committed. That's what commitment is. Are you willing to go the distance for what you believe in? I've run 7 marathons, not currently in the shape I'm in now, but I have run 7 marathons. And what I did was I went out and told everybody I was going to do it. I said, I'm going to run a marathon. And what does that help you do? It gets you other people involved. I found 2 other people that were just as crazy as I was to go out and run the marathon. So it's important to communicate your goals because you want other people to get involved and have buy-in. When I started my company, Longevity Industries, which is a media company focused around manufacturing. Well, what did I do? I told everybody. And what did it get me? I got support from the industry industry, within manufacturing, I found vetting for the system that I had. What it gave me was this outside perspective from people around my industry to say, what do you want to achieve? And they listened to the idea and they said, okay, that's not going to work. And I changed it a little bit and worked on it. And that's an important aspect, is that vetting process for your goals and what you want to achieve. It raised awareness for what I was trying to do. And some people will get involved with you. Some people will get behind you and help to push you. So it's important to get out and communicate your goals and your dreams. Well, when I started, what did it do by also communicating? It got me a grant for equipment and support. It found me guests, because the industry that I was in, the Precision Metal Forming Association, was willing to get behind me to make this happen. They were willing to find guests who were owners of companies, manufacturing leaders, technology leaders. They were willing to all get involved with it. And that's an important aspect. They found me sponsors and were able to promote my show. So that's why you want to make sure you communicate your goals out. Understanding what your goals are, what you want to achieve, is an important part of setting that sight. Where do you want to go? You have to do that. A lot of people will say it's not possible. I got a black belt in Taekwondo because I was committed to doing it. Roger Bannister was the first man to run under a 4-minute mile. They said it can't be done. They said your heart would explode. They said the human body is not able to do it. But if you believe in your goal and you keep working towards it, anything is possible. Now, is a 2-minute mile possible? I don't think so, but as of today, it's not. But you have to keep working towards your goal and improving it. But people will tell you can't do it. When I did 12 triathlons, when I first started, I had to learn how to swim. I couldn't swim. I could keep from drowning. Understand the difference between knowing how to swim and keeping from drowning is a very distinct difference. Paddling away at the doggy paddle doesn't get you to swim a mile across a lake. You have to be able to swim and do it efficiently, because that's part of doing things. But I had to learn how to do that. And that's an important goal, is not being afraid. I've gone skydiving. I want you to understand what skydiving means. Everybody, whether you're muted or not, I'd like you to unmute, and I want you to say, yes, I can.
Yes, I can.
Yes, I can. Yes, I can.
Yes, I can.
Yes, I will. Yes, I can.
Yes, I can.
Yeah. And the importance of that is it chemically changes something in your brain to say these kinds of things to yourself. Saying, yes, I can, it changes the chemistry and makes you feel different. Just doing that, just something that simple. Don't feel like, well, this is just a bunch of hoo-ha and I don't believe in it. It physically changes your chemistry in your body. So go out and communicate your goals, even if you have to overcome fears to doing it. And one of the major fears is overcoming public speaking, which is why I got in Toastmasters. I figured if I was going to be a host of a show on a podcast, I needed to get better at speaking, which is why I got in Toastmasters to begin with. Next part of communication is your message. You have to determine what your message is. Whether you realize that everybody here is an expert in something. And we'll go through this, a little exercise that I have for everybody here a little bit later, but whether you realize it or not, everybody here is an expert in something. And what does expert mean? It doesn't automatically mean that you are the top echelon in your field. It's that you know more than the average person and most people in your field. If you know just a little bit more than them, you're probably considered an expert in that field. So don't downplay your value as a person. Anyone who's ever gone to get a haircut realize that people don't pay $100 to walk in a barber shop and get the number 7 haircut. It's not what they do. But many people will pay $150 or more to have their hair done, and they're there because they want that help. And what that means is they want you to say, this is what will look good on you. This is what's important. This will emphasize your facial characteristics. That's what they're paying for. People go to a hairstylist. You can go to anywhere and pick a haircut. When you go to a hairstylist, you're going there because that person can dictate what looks best on you. Let's take a look at somebody who just has eyeglasses. I'm not paying you to sell me a product. This is a big crucial aspect that you see in most industries now. And I don't care what your field of expertise is. Understanding not selling a product. You're there to tell them what they need. You're there to solve a problem. That's what you're hired for. I'm not hiring you to come to tell me what product. Here's this product. Here's this cup. Okay? I'm not there to solve that problem by just giving them a cup. What I'm doing is I'm giving them nourishment. I'm giving them a way to keep from being dehydrated. You have to understand what your goal is. So you have to understand what the value is and what's important. So when you're communicating, know those things. Know what the value is and know what's important. Of course, the devil is in the details. All of us know that. It's easy to talk in these very high level things, but understand that the details is where things get done. Walt Whitman used to say, keep your face always towards the sunshine and the shadows will fall behind you. If anybody here, raise your hand if you know who Barbara Corcoran is from on the show Shark Tank. You probably know who she is. She said that when she looks for people to hire, the positive attitude is the number one thing she looks for. Everything else they can train and teach you, but your attitude is everything. And how you convey things and how you communicate them, positive attitude is incredibly important. If you go in with I'm just here, I'm here to collect a paycheck. You need to have an entrepreneurial spirit. You need to be there to say, I'm going to take ownership of this, whatever that is. Even if you don't own the company, it doesn't matter. You have the attitude that this is your company. You spend like it's your company. You have the attitude of treating people like it's your company. If you do those things and you have a positive attitude, you're going to be extremely successful. This is something that I learned through Toastmasters. When you're communicating, you can't improve if no one tells you. We all have a habit of living somewhat in an echo chamber and hiding in our own circle of friends. And the bad part of that is it reinforces the same message to us. We think, wow, we're great because the people around us tell us we're great. You need to have a filter on that and people to be honest with you to say, that idea is a bad idea. You need to give people constructive feedback. That's the way you're going to improve. And that's an important emphasis that Toastmasters as a group does. When you do a speech evaluation, you tell people things that they can work on. If everything's great, I used to say, would that speech win a speech contest? If the answer is no, then I have things to work on. Not because I'm trying to compete in a speech contest, but to understand that I have things to improve. And the only way to do that is feedback. So when you communicate your message, know your message and shout it from the rooftops. Lou Holtz used to say that, is that one of the things that's important is know what you want and have something that's important to you and an undying passion to say it. Now, obviously I'm paraphrasing, but that's an important thing to understand, is that having that passion for what you want to communicate is such an important aspect. Communication breakdown. This is something that everybody does and has problems with and struggles with. You have to strengthen your skills by listening and speaking. So it's not just about speaking, it's listening. So when you talk about communication, we often overlook the other half of the communication skill is listening, getting people to talk to you. That's what we want. We want information. It's an important part of this, of the communication give and take. The powerful play goes on, and you may contribute a verse. That's a saying by Walt Whitman. If you want to contribute a verse, you need to understand who you are as yourself. Self-awareness is an important aspect of that. Anybody here, raise your hand if you've done a 360 evaluation or know what a 360 evaluation is. 360 evaluation, you typically, there's two versions of it. Number one, you get everybody around you, your friends, your family, your coworkers, everybody around you to take a quiz and talk about you and say what you need to improve and how you can work to get better. That's one of the versions of it, and that's the one that I've taken before, is having other people around you find those holes. We all have blind spots. There's nobody who doesn't have a blind spot. The best people, the best leaders, find out what those holes are and find somebody that can complement them and fill those. My son, when he was communicating, one of the big failures he had was what we call the handoff. He was working with one of his coworkers, and there were three people. Two of them worked together. They just hired a third person, and he was working 4 days a week, and he had to work on Mondays. And I said, "Are you working Monday?" And he goes, "I'm not sure. I think the new person's going to work Monday." And I said, "Well, who dictates that?" He says, "Well, our boss said it's up to us." So him and the other guy that had been there, they decided that the girl that was hired on Monday, that she was going to work that Monday. Well, they sent her a text. They never got any word back, and guess what? Nobody worked that Monday. Boss said, "Well, how come nobody was there on Monday?" Well, you can't just tell somebody and assume that they're going to do this. You have to include everybody when you're making these kinds of decisions. All parties need to be informed and know what's going on. They also have to communicate within each other and get confirmation. Before I came on here, Glenn sent me an email last night to confirm it, and this morning we've got messages. That's follow-up. That's an important aspect. When you have communication breakdown, it's usually because you didn't hand off the information. You know, like a baton when you're running, you can't let go of the baton until the other person has it. When you talk about information, you have to be actively listening and confirming that they heard and understood what you're talking about. So when you're communicating your message, make sure that you do those things. You're communicating, you're actively listening, and confirming that they heard you. And then follow up. Any message you have, make sure when you're talking to somebody that you follow up with them. If they say something and they want more information, make sure you follow up with them. That's to avoid communication breakdowns. Who is your audience? Who are your customers? Who are you communicating with? It may be your family. It may be your coworkers. It may be your boss. It may just be people out there. Who is your sphere of influence or your network? You need to determine this in order to massage your message and make sure that you're doing the right thing and communicating that out. You have a circle of friends. You have your close friends. Then you have your next level of people that you're close to, of friends and colleagues. And then you have acquaintances. And I used to say this, a friend, and is the difference between a friend and acquaintance. An acquaintance will help you move, but a friend will help you move a body. Now, many of us will never have to move a body, but if you do, you want to have a friend there to do it. Let me give you a friendship analysis. Here's your friends. And here's people that don't dance. And here in the Venn diagram of that are where they come together. They're no friends of mine. Because if your friends don't dance, and if they don't dance, they're no friends of mine. Anyone out there know what song that was and when that came from? I don't know if I saw anybody's hands go up there. Oh, there we go, Kelly. Thank you. Men Without Hats. That was who sang that. Networking. When you talk about networking, so your sphere of influence, HR professionals say that 90% of the job leads that they have come in from a vetted source, meaning an employee, somebody else they work for, another administrator. They already knew about this person before they saw that resume, or they were handed the resume by somebody within the company. That means only 10% or less are cold interviews or somebody that was on Indeed or one of these other places. In my history, I only had one job in the last 30 years out of 7 jobs that was a cold interview. And in my total 36 years of working, including all the jobs I had when I was a kid, including things like working in a gas station, working construction, only twice. All the rest, it was because I knew somebody and I had a contact. If you make contacts, all of these people here, when you look at this, every one of these are part of your sphere of influence. These contacts and these lines here represent a contact you have and a person you know. The more contacts you have, the better off you are in life in every single way. Whether it's because you need to know an electrician, you got a plumbing problem and you need to have somebody come over. All of those things need to have a network for. See if I can get this to work.
It was so good, I told 2 friends about it, and they told 2 friends, and so on, and so on, and so on. And believe me, there's still nothing like the original Fabergé Organic. It gives me super shine, super body.
And super fresh-smelling hair.
Try it, and you'll tell your friends about it, and they'll tell their friends, and so on, and so on.
Now, anybody who's as old as me might remember that commercial of you tell 2 friends, and they tell 2 friends, and so on, and so on. The importance of that is to understand that that's how communication works. When you talk to somebody and you talk to your friends, they're going to tell people, and they tell people. And that's how word of mouth spreads. And that's the best form and the purest form of communication. Now, understand that within the group that you have even here, why is it important and what does everybody here represent? There's an honesty and a trust within this group that you can go ahead and refer somebody. So if you say, I need somebody for this skill set or that skill set, this group is already vetted because you know one another, and it adds a level of trust and honesty within it. And that's an important aspect to understand when you talk about what the value is of communication. Now, you're not alone in the crowd, but what sets you apart? I've spoken to quite a few colleges over the years, and one of the things I tell them is that every one of you has the same degree, every one of you, but what is different about you? And you need to know that, because everybody in that room is also your competitor. You need to know what's different about you. Scott Oldford, he created this, the unfair advantage. Now, what is an unfair advantage? It's something that only you have. I'll say that again. It's something that only you have. Now, how do you create an unfair advantage? Well, first thing you do is you have to figure out what your skill set is and what sets you apart. When I started my company, Longevity Industries, what I did was I took this circle and I said, here are different things in different areas. So I wanted to do a podcast, so podcasters was one of the areas I chose of who I needed to connect with. I already had expertise in smart technology and had connections in that area. I already had connections in manufacturing, the manufacturing world. And so this area here is the area of expertise that I needed to focus on, because that was the niche that I was going to be able to leverage in manufacturing, is that area right there. Now, we won't do it right now, but I'd like you to, when you think about this later on today, draw 3 circles, and I want you to think about what it is that you have as an expertise. Who is your audience? What skills or work experiences do you have? And what interests do you have? So your audience might be a church group. Your interests might be, I like woodworking, and your skills or work experience might be in, let's say that your skill set is actually in bookkeeping. Well, then you could maybe work together to say, woodworking within the church, this area here, bear with me, this area here is where you might be able to provide services for church groups in woodworking. And over here might be bookkeeping for your church group. Now, you may be able to provide bookkeeping services to people in the woodworking areas and vice versa. But the best area is if you can bring together 3 skill sets together or 3 interests together, where they merge, that could be the area that sets you apart from everybody else. You have to have something that is your unfair advantage, what it is that makes you different, makes you special. Then you have to go out there and leverage your unfair advantage. You have to go out and communicate it and find your audience for this. Take a look at these 2 pictures. Can anybody, take yourselves off mute, can anybody see what any of the differences are between these 2?
Size.
Well, there's several things there. You got the difference in size, you got the difference in texture, you got the difference in color, you got the difference in length, basically. So yeah, everything.
Yeah.
Exactly.
But at their base end, somebody might say they're both white squares. But here's what the big difference is: $14,999,980. That's the difference between those 2. The top picture is a picture of a $20 gallon of PPG paint. The bottom one is a $15 million textured white painting by Robert Ryman. Texture is important. Detail is important. Nuance is important. Your story is important, and your message is important. So you need to know what separates you. Telling a story, I've gone to many museums over the years, and I can tell you the stories that is what sells that painting, because some of the stories I've heard when I hear somebody describe a painting it's amazing. And I'm like, that person was an incredible salesman to convince somebody that that's what that is. But texture is important. Details are important. Nuance is important. And just remember that your message is important. So what was important today? Communicate your dream, your initiative. Go out, take the initiative, go out and have commitment and overcome your fears. And make sure that other people know about it. Communicate your dream. Communicate your message. You got to know your message, and you have to know your strength. Where communications break down, make sure that you're clear and confirm what you're saying, and then follow up with people. Communicate your audience. Know who your audience is. Network with them. Cast a wider net. And get out of your comfort zone in your echo chamber, because that just isn't going to grow for you. It's not going to make you grow as a person. It's not going to make your business grow. And then leverage your unfair advantage. Know what it is and leverage it. And that wraps it up for me. If anybody has any questions, here's how you can get in touch with me. There's my phone number or my email address. I'm happy to answer any questions that anybody has.
Well, thank you, Dean. You did give us a lot to think about. I know for myself that I learned years ago that doing a cold call hardly ever worked. And that if I could find somebody who knew somebody, that just speeded up the process so enormously. In fact, recently, Glenn introduced me to someone, and through that person, I've met 3 or 4 other people with just in a week. And again, as I was mentioning earlier, this group has a lot of connections. And so people in the group just don't ever hesitate to reach out and say, you know, I need some information in this field, you know, and we live to help each other. And so I think that's one of the key takeaways that I get, is how important that is. I just saw that Maurice and Corey had joined us. I didn't give you a chance to introduce yourself. So Maurice, how are you this morning?
He's on mute.
Hey, Corey, how are you?
Hey, how's it going? I'm doing great. Hey, Maurice, we can't hear you. You got to take your mute off. You're on mute. There you go.
Hey, let there be sound. Well, good morning, everyone. I'm Maurice Lewis, and communications is my business and my profession.
What was your big takeaway today?
Organization in terms of communicating thoroughly with your group, bringing everybody aboard, making sure that there's a clear understanding of what we have to do when we need to do it. And most importantly, also, is why we need to do this.
Yeah. Along those lines, Maurice, one of the things that was kind of hard for me to learn was that when I was trying to communicate to somebody, I had to understand they weren't hearing it through my ears. They were hearing it through their ears and their understanding. And there was times when I was not communicating at all because I wasn't taking into my thought process their way of processing the information that I was giving. And I'm sure this is something you've had to become really good at.
Well, it speaks to a truth. Your background, what you've done for a living, really pertains to the tone of voice that you use when you are trying to get your message across to different people, especially in stressful situations. Your tone of voice is the bridge that can either get you there or it inhibits further progress.
Well, along those lines, I wonder if anybody else is having a problem with this. the fact that during these months we're not together, you know, but we're doing it over this method of Zoom or whatever. And so often people will drop out, you know, we don't have the kind of consistency of being able to communicate. And I have found that to be, you know, a real disadvantage. Is anybody else having that problem?
Well, yeah, it's an effect more for me than a problem. I feel affected by it. Uh, Getting there and drinking that strong coffee.
Yeah.
I think we all miss our cup of good in the morning.
Yes, we do.
Glenn, you got to at least say the name of the coffee man.
Yeah, Ian Goodman, our loyal sponsor at Goodman Coffee there at Warehouse Row. So if any of you happen to be out, stop by, tell Ian thanks, and have a cup of good.
Speaking of Goodman, I read that they've done so well during this time period. They're opening up another shop.
This is Goodman or who? Yeah.
Goodman. Yeah, which is great. Good for them.
I'll volunteer on the lack of interpersonal communication right now. It seems that we have less ability to have authentic discussions. They can be a lot more superficial. People don't actually get to the meaning, and will frequently, you know, I'm an over communicator. I was accused of that in a really good way by in a 360 interview through work. Came back through my supervisor that very cantankerous electrical engineer made the comment, you know, he really doesn't need to leave me a phone message, send me an email, and then come find me and tell me the same thing. I smiled at her and she smiled at me and I said, we're communicating effectively with Ralph, aren't we? And she said, yes, you are. But that's what I miss. I miss the ability to be able to round that out and get that, you know, get all the way to that point, because there's just something innate about the human condition in getting face to face and person to person. There's just something extra there in being able to get that. That connection is missing.
I agree completely. I mean, I think you can read people so much better when you're face to face. I mean, there's almost a vibration that we have for each other, and you can. I think the word authentic, and I think it is hard to be authentic and separated, you know, by a screen the way we all are. Corey, you were starting to introduce yourself and tell us. I know I've been curious as to how you've been doing with your new space during this time. Corey Green. Nope, he's not there.
Well, may I chime in for a moment?
Please.
All right. So, having been described in the past as the most introverted person on the planet, these days I thought would be wonderful that the introvert in the world would just kind of quietly be themselves. What I have found is that between Zoom and their inbox and emails and Facebook and LinkedIn and Twitter and everything else that I've been on for years and years and years, it's been noisier in my office than ever. And it's a different kind of challenge. How do you communicate with all these things without going crazy? Because introverts are used to quiet. That's how they energize themselves. So it's been a wonderful experience in getting out there, which Glenn has helped me so much to do, out of my cave. And the result has been fascinating. Glenn likes me to brag I hate it. And maybe that's not the right word. But this period is so unique, so amazing. Even if you feel you don't have that face-to-face communication that you like, you have a farther reach. You can go anywhere and go. Just enjoy it. Go for it. Go as far as you like. I have a whole bunch of folks I'm working with in Kenya. Let's do it. Take advantage of it. That's my introvert's advice.
I agree. As an artist, I consider myself an observer. That's sort of like a professional introvert.
I love
tell
it.
you my business by I stand back, even as a designer, I look at, okay, there's a problem. I stand back and look at how people are dealing with the situation, and it comes up to me with how to I might make that situation better. So I have to stand back and observe. So it's a, like I say, a professional introvert. But it's one thing I found in speaking about manufacturing, and I've brought this up in another group that we're in with I used to find, old as I am, I used to find that the yellow pages was easier to find things in, and in modern situations with the internet, because I've, an example is I've got a design for a living structure. I've been looking for someone who, a manufacturing company that makes fiberglass swimming pools. Well, for really over a year, I've been, I just get on the internet, try to find it, word it any way I can, try to find where the nearest manufacturer is. And I found the closest one I found was in South Carolina. Well, a few weeks ago, we went over to see the fellow that's doing our prototyping in a little bitty town of Summertown, Tennessee, north of Lawrenceburg, south of Nashville. And on the way there on Highway 64, we drove right past the place that makes swimming pools. They had them outside drying after they painted them. And I was never able to find these people on the internet. I just had to find them driving down the road. And I thought that was, it was great to find them. They're a lot closer. And I can't wait to talk to them. But it was so odd to me that here with the internet that's supposed to, connect the entire world, I couldn't find these people that are basically in my backyard. And it's just that thing. I think that's one thing that manufacturing has got to, especially for bringing it back to the United States, has got to deal with. There's a lot of people with good ideas. I know a fellow that I just talked to a few days ago that has a tabletop 3D printer. And he's got a good idea. So he actually manufactures these things on his tabletop and sells them. It's some type of electrical switch. But he's looking for people to manufacture these things. Well, in talking to our fellow that's doing the prototype, he has connections with all kinds of manufacturers, injection molding, and he has equipment that it was so much faster in 3D printing than I thought they were already at. There's a lot that's not being said, I think.
But I think that gets back to the thing Dean was talking about people communicating their message clearly. On the internet, it's like Deborah was talking about, it's so noisy. And if you don't have a clear message, people can't find you. Dean, to get back to you, actually, I'd like you to elaborate on that just a little bit, the whole clear message thing.
In several different ways, we look at, I guess I should have turned this on here. I'll do it this way. In several different ways, you can look at communicating your message in a clear manner. Number one, you need to know what your message is and your audience. And when I was talking about developing that niche, what is your unfair advantage? That helps you to really kind of burrow down to what your core message is and what your core focus should be. Sometimes we get overwhelmed. It would have been easy for me to say, I want to be everything to all manufacturers. it's just too broad. You can't do that because that's where you get lost. Because the more vanilla you are, the more difficult it is to separate yourself from everybody else. But the more focused you are, the more it helps you get to that group and the people you want to talk to, because you're focused. And the more focused you get also helps you to be, again, talking about that expertise, and being an expert comes from that, because these are where those three groups are. It's very unlikely for everybody in this group to ever find somebody that would match up in those three circles, because your area of influence of your audience, the area of your interests, and the area of your skill set, it's very unlikely that all three of those would come together. And that separates you from the herd, and it also helps you to clarify your message. It's important. Sometimes people get overwhelmed by looking at what they do, and they think that that's it. A long time ago, I forget what the newspaper was. There's a story that an old newspaper got buried, and their business was going down and going down. And then they realized that they were not in the business of newspapers. They were in the media business, and that changed everything. And then they took off. You see that with people. You need to figure out what you are. There's a book called Make It Stick. I think it's Make It Stick. And it's about communication. And what they talked about was things like, figure out what you are. There's this small town newspaper that has a circulation of more people than actually live in the town. And their thing was names, names, names. So all they do is make sure that in their newspaper, they put in Bobby's baseball game and Timmy's swimming meet. And they put in everybody's name they can, so that they're in the newspaper. And that increases their readership, because people want to see their name in the newspaper. And it gives you, but you got to know what your focus is. That's in a dying process, and in a dying industry like newspapers, that newspaper is flourishing. But you have to realize that there is a niche for a lot of different things, but you need to understand what yours is. And that's the most important, because then you can go out and target your audience, target them with your message, and be very clear and very precise about it. And that really makes all the difference.
Dean.
Bob Ritchie, I was going to get to you in just a second, Peggy. Bob Ritchie, that's kind of what you do in your business, isn't it? Helping businesses to find that.
Yeah, I help businesses to find that, but mine's more of a, I guess you could say, technical nature, in that I try to help people use marketing to increase a return on investment. Too often businesses are inundated with social media, with print, with, what works, what doesn't work. Not everything works for every type of business. You can have a great social media post and everything, but that doesn't really bring you return on investment for managing it, for the time that is being spent on it. So you got to know your target audiences, and then you have to put together things that will generate a return. And that's what I try to do, is take some load off of people, that small business owners, that, because I've been in that place where, as a small business owner, you're trying to manage employees, sell your business, manage the books, and those three are big enough. And then you have to think about marketing. Where am I putting my message? Where's my message getting out? And those are sometimes the hardest things. Is what time do you have for your family? And that's the thing, is concentrate on is the outcome you spend 16 hours a day in your business and none with your family. Your family is important. And so if you spend all your time having to manage all the small pieces, then the large piece, which is your family, will be missed.
Yeah, good point. Becky, one of the things that I wanted to share about Becky is that in another group that we belong to, which is the Marketing Clinic, Becky shared with us how she really focused her message on LinkedIn to increase her business. And so, Becky, if you could speak a little bit to the things that you learned about communication as you were trying to figure that out.
Sure. So that actually fits in with what I was going to say anyway. So I've really struggled to pick a niche because I'm naturally curious about everything. And that has made it really difficult. But I actually just this last week stumbled upon what my niche is. And it was by really thinking about who I get really passionate about working with and for. And that is companies that are strengthening communities. And I kind of stumbled upon this because I've picked up a couple of new clients in the last few weeks. Both of them are organizations that are, one is a nonprofit. I don't want to do too much nonprofit work, but they are both working to build a stronger community. And the one for-profit, he contacted me because of my LinkedIn post, because of the strong businesses, strong books, strong finances, build a strong business tone and the collaborative tone of my LinkedIn content. And it really that's when it really hit me, was that there are some business owners that I'm working with, some of these as well, that are just, it's all about me. And I really love working with companies that are not just me, but instead us. And the tone of those LinkedIn posts, Marcia, to your point, is what brought him to me. He didn't even talk to another bookkeeper. He had decided he didn't like who he was with. He liked the tone of what I was saying and my communication style. And I was I had him signed within a couple of days, and it's my biggest account to date. So it's really funny how all this content I had been putting out worked its way to this and made me come to that recognition and realization of what my niche should be. Because I've struggled with this literally for 3 years now, what my niche should be.
Well, congratulations. Well, that's a coup.
Yeah.
And I think it also goes to one of the good points that Dean was making in the circles that there's a lot of times we don't necessarily focus on is what is our interest, because not just our skills and our audience, but our interest, because if we don't have passion in what we're doing, then we're not going to be bringing our best to the table. And so for you to identify what you have a passion for within what you're doing, I think that's great. That's a big win for you.
It is.
Anybody else want to share?
Absolutely. I haven't introduced myself yet. My name is Corey Green. I own a karate school, and I'm living the dream, actually. Everything you're talking about, I can check off all those boxes. Speaking of circles, I have a book I've not published yet, but it's called The Golden Waffle. And it's about being nice to everyone you meet, because you never know who you're going to meet. And I've been grinding, spending those hours, like you said, away from family. For 2 years, I had to do it for Uber, though, for driving and trying to make the money. But then I moved my business right before the virus. It was the best thing I could have done. Took the risk before, the virus. So that's the thing. To get ahead, to get out of your comfort zone, you have to, push through and take chances. And those chances are what make us who we are. And we get further ahead in life by taking those estimated and calculated chances. And so what I've been doing is totally overhauling everything on the interior of my business right now and getting it prepared for the future and trying to get it done all right now. And I'm painting today. And do you guys want to know what the colors are going to be? Do you guys want to tour this place? This place is massive. I get to be in a warehouse. I mean, I'm living the dream, guys. And my niche is I teach special needs students, and I have an athlete on the U.S. karate team for 4 years. And I have a textbook I wrote about that. And you guys don't know this, but I'm working with the university on inventions for a couple years. So I'm way further ahead than most people believe. Wait till we get the virtual reality going. I mean, could you imagine? If you don't know how to do it, we can just put a headset on and you can just do the moves the way I do them. Copy the movement. Anyways, so I'd love to give you guys a tour, but I don't want to take away from Dean's presentation. It's been great. I'm learning a lot. And oh, by the way, the color. Do anyone want to guess the color? You want to chime in so we can get some people talking a little bit? You guys are all quiet.
I think orange is the only option.
Orange. All right. Doesn't that make you hungry though? That's what Burger King used in their advertisement. The color is going to be gold and black. So at the very top, I mean black. Here's the other side. And paint that today. So gold and black. But built the office, built the changing areas. I mean, everything's just done. So, you know, this whole situation with the virus does not bother me. I'm a recluse. I'm an Alaskan. I'm a loner. I still get to teach people though, so I get to see people. But even though I didn't get to see them for a while, I still saw them virtually. So there is something about the human contact. When you're in front of people, it's a whole different world, guys. I mean, have you ever tried to teach a 5-year-old virtually? I had to teach 4 of them. I had to change my standards. It was so hard. You had the parents coaching the kid, trying to make them do it. And I was like, I'm teaching 2 people here. And no one's listening. So it's too tough, you know, but I'm glad that when we get back to normalcy, because we all need to get together and celebrate. And by the way, you're welcome to come to my open house. It's September 12th. And we're going to kick it off on J103 Radio at 2 o'clock. And it's from 2 to 6. So you're all invited. You got to RSVP. You got to go on my website. And it tells you how to do it. Just greenskarate.com. That's all you have to go to. And then RSVP, you can come and free food and check the place out in person. So.
All right. Well, Rick never misses on free food, so you got it.
Yeah.
All right.
That's for artists. We can't do that. No
It's going to be salsa-ritas.
Right.
Dean, if you could address one of the things we've been talking about is communicating in these times when we're all on a screen. Do you have any tips for us about that?
Being in Toastmasters, which was very much a face-to-face organization, I told everybody, and I still continue to say this, is that this is the skill set you need to develop. Because this is not going away. Whether you think it is or isn't, this is here to stay. Zoom meetings are going to continue. Whether you go back to a face-to-face meeting and still have an element of Zoom, we've had where a year ago, Toastmasters had less than, I think it was 12% of the clubs met virtually. Almost 80% meet virtually now, currently. And the intention is that 70% of them said they will always keep an element of this as they move forward. If you're going for a job interview, this is how you're doing it. If you're talking to customers and doing business, this is how you're doing it. This is just the new normal and will continue to, because I hate to say this, but the reality is at the end of this year, when people start to see some of the numbers come back of people not traveling, money not being spent on going out and into the field, those numbers are going to blow away a lot of the people, and they're not going to go back to the kind of travel that we used to do. It's already been talked about from a lot of the Fortune 500 companies that this is going to have an element of this forever. So you have to start developing these skills, whether it's learning how to do things like this neat background behind me of putting a virtual screen in there, or whether it's lighting using something like this here. Well, you can't see it on this one, but you can see it over here on the other picture. There's these kinds of things, you have to adapt to what they are. And you need to build these skills. I had people just recently, one of the Toastmasters groups, phenomenal speaker. She is tremendous, but she really struggled with using this. This is the other thing that's very difficult right here. Looking there is a very difficult thing, especially when you're doing it on a tablet, which is what I'm doing, because it's not, this is straight ahead for me. This is where the camera is, and there's no light on it or anything to draw your attention to. So as the AT&T girl says, you know, put googly eyes on it to draw your attention so that you look over there. Whatever you have to do, but we need to get better at these skills. And whether it's how do I zoom in? Well, I zoom in by actually moving further away and in closer. Using tools of creating an image. If I turn this way and I sit back, there's an element here of opportunity because there's space in front of me. If instead I were to turn the other way and were to be this way, it would be very claustrophobic and it would seem like somebody doesn't have choices. There are messages within it. And when you look at how things are made to appear, there's a lot of tools out there, and this tool lines up very well with photography or film. If you watch any videos on film, you'll see that there's a lot of elements you can adapt to and create an image and a personality that you want to make and set a tone for how you want it to appear by using this tool. So the better you get at using this tool, the better off it'll be in the long run.
Dean, I was listening to a podcast yesterday, and it was someone whose kindergartner was starting school doing it virtually for the first time. And he made the point that the traditional, what we think of as school with bells and you do this for this period of time, then you do this, that was designed to create good little factory workers. And now their school is being designed to create good remote workers. He said, my kindergartner can mute and unmute himself better than the CEOs I work with on a daily basis. And I thought that was just a really interesting concept and made me feel a lot better about parking my children in front of a screen to watch a virtual teacher teach them all day.
Yeah.
One of the interesting things that this reminds me of is the battle that took place in the communications industry when satellite technology was first being introduced. And in specific, we were moving away from film, okay, which was warm, had tones and depths. And they said, oh, this ENG, electronic news gathering, it will never work. It's sterile, it's cold, it's flat. And someone said it's reusable because it's inexpensive. That changed the whole thing. And I think we're at that same gate right now. And communicators are going to be able to get out to our audiences and to know what will our audiences want to see from us and how will they want to see it.
Yeah.
Right. I was a part of that change also, because I think, you know, Maurice, I was a film editor for years, and my husband's background is in film. And so when that happened, it was like, just like that. And you're right. It reminds me of how when COVID hit, so many things changed just like that. And for us that were in the film that became video business, it changed in Atlanta, it changed overnight. And I think that Dean is right, that this is a reality. I don't like it, but I think that doesn't matter, you know? And I am realizing that I've got to get better at this. And I've got to embrace it because it's not, like Dean said, it's not going away. And actually, Rick and I are fortunate with the business that we're building is that that this happened before we got our office and all that kind of thing, because our business to business sales with hospitals and that kind of thing are going to be done like this instead of us traveling, you know, and to get used to it early on, I think is a good idea. So yeah, I'm going to have to work on this for sure.
You know, Marcia and Dean and everyone, I had a few thoughts, and I may have to get off. It's interesting. The reason I've not participated is construction workers were supposed to be here again at 8. They're still not here. I got a text from one of them a while ago, but I had several things that I made note of, and great message there today, Dean. So much. I took about 5 pages of notes, but here we talked about family, and you know, this is family. You are my family, and my extended family, and I appreciate it. There was talk about the comfort zone. I talk about a lot, and we've I think most everyone has now learned the importance of getting out of their comfort zone. And we talked a little bit about normal. Well, the normal as we knew it, in fact, a talk that I gave for Toastmasters that was disastrous that I met Dean on for the district, I talked about this adversity to advantage, and our normal as we knew it is gone. It will never, ever return, as each of you have pretty much documented. We will create a new norm, and I think I have looked at myself at the time I was spending running across town, going from meeting to meeting to meeting. And so much of that could have been done virtually. Now, I love being in person. Don't misunderstand me, but it's going to cause us to evaluate how much our time is worth even more as a result of COVID, I think. One other note I made, for some of you that saw a number on there with no name, that's General Bob Woods. It's with us. He said he couldn't talk, but he's listening, and he wanted to let you know, Dean, how much he's really enjoyed what you're having to say. Becky and Corey, both of you are examples of taking adversity and turning it into advantage. And kudos to you. And with that in mind, we think about our weaknesses, which ties in with stepping outside the comfort zone. If you'd pardon me, Corey, I would like to tell a little story that doesn't involve karate, but it does involve something somewhat similar. There was a 10-year-old boy that had a terrible automobile accident, and he lost his left arm. But he decided he wanted to take judo lessons, so he found a very well-respected older gentleman that for his sensei. He went religiously, and for months he worked on one move. And finally, after months, he said, "Sensei, why don't you teach me another move?" He says, "This one move is one of the greatest moves in judo, and it's the only move you will ever need." So a few weeks later, the sensei takes him to his first competition, a tournament. The young boy easily wins the first 2. The third was a little more difficult. In fact, it was so difficult, the referee, if that's what they call them, called timeout and really wanted to stop the match. But the sensei said, "No, let it continue." Well, sure enough, even though the boy he was fighting was much stronger, more skillful, eventually he dropped his guard. The young boy used his one move, pinned him, won the match, and won the tournament. They were driving home, and he said, finally, after the sensei had gone over each match and every move with him, evaluating everything he had done, he said, what was really on his mind is, "But sensei, why did you just teach me one move?" He said, "Well, that one move you have learned, you've almost mastered, is probably one of the most difficult in judo, but it is the only move you will ever need. The only known defense for this move is for your opponent to grab your left arm. So, for those of you that think that you're operating from a disadvantage, it may be your greatest advantage. And that's it from Glenn.
Very good.
That's a story I'll remember. That was a good one.
I had planned that one for marketing clinic Wednesday, but I've already let it out. I have to come up with another one.
Well, speaking of marketing clinic, I would like to let everyone know that it is tomorrow evening at 6, and we meet every other Wednesday. This is really a dynamic group. It's the only other group that I regularly participate in besides this one. And we have learned so much about, really a lot about what Dean was talking about concerning focusing your message and how best to present yourself in a way that's not sell, but is focused on your customer and what people need and how that you're providing the service or the product that they need. And so anyway, you can easily find it. It's Chattanooga Marketing Clinic on Facebook and has the link to our Zoom. And also, I would like to let you know what's coming up on our Tuesday mornings. On September 1st, we are having Dr. Ming Wong. And this, I read about this guy and went to his website. I think this is going to be a fascinating talk. He's got a great story regarding his escape from China during the Cultural Revolution. And he came to America with $50 in his pocket, and it's a classic story, but with his motivation is to help people find common ground because he was in the middle of such conflict. And that is something he's been devoted to, and he has a foundation, and he's a PhD and a doctor, and he's a pretty amazing guy. So that is on September 1st, 2 weeks from today. And then on September 15th, the gentleman that I mentioned that Glenn introduced us to, his name is Dean Wegner. He's the co-founder of the Authentically American brand. And he is all about bringing manufacturing to America. And he has a clothing line that is manufactured exclusively here. And he's a really, talk about authentic. He is a very authentic fellow. Rick and I were just so impressed with him. And I think he will be a delight for you guys. So we hopefully we'll see all of you and more in 2 weeks on September 1st, and then in 4 weeks on September 15th. And it is 9:29, so I think that we're about ready to sign off. If anybody wants to stay on and talk to each other, please feel free to do so. And as always, I've enjoyed seeing your faces and hearing your voices, and I look forward to the time when it's in person again.
Thank you, Dean, for everything. It's been a great pleasure to hear you speak.
Yeah.